Workplace harassment has reached levels of toxicity. So much so, California is taking the lead in putting the brakes on. The state has 8 new laws effective January 2019. Hello, I'm Janet Yee, and welcome to Take Notice. Joining us today is Millbrae attorney Amanda Riddle. Amanda, you're going to narrow this field down for us and talk about sexual harassment training.
Yes.
What's different than all the other laws we've had?
Well, for the last 15 years or so, it's been required that any company with 50 or more workers train their supervisors on anti-harassment, anti-discrimination procedures in the law. Now, as of January 1st, 2019, that law has been expanded to include all companies that have 5 or more workers. And so a lot more companies are now subject to these trainings. The other thing is that the law says that now not only supervisors need to be trained, but all employees need to be trained.
Across the board?
Across the board, all workers.
This is going to affect an awful lot of people. How is this training going to be done, and how is it going to be monitored?
Well, there are a number of ways it is done. A lot of companies hire an attorney like me. We have to have at least 2 years of employment law practice to be qualified to do these trainings. Some of them, they'll hire an attorney like me to do the trainings live. And I do those 2-hour trainings for the supervisors, 1-hour training for the employees. Other companies use webinars. When this law was put into place at the end of last year, the legislature asked the Department of Fair Employment and Housing to create webinars that these companies could use to train their employees and their supervisors.
You're one of those qualified people. Can you talk about identify what this harassment law encompasses? It's not just sexual harassment, is that right?
Correct. You're supposed to train not just on sexual harassment, but on harassment, discrimination, or retaliation of any kind for what we call protected characteristics under the law. Those include race, religion, color, military status, gender, and that includes gender orientation or sexual orientation, pregnancy, physical or mental disability, veteran status, immigration status. And so you're supposed to train your employees and your supervisors on anti-discrimination tactics faced at any of those characteristics.
What about the employees? Are they protected? Does this cover customers?
Yes, you are supposed to provide a workplace free of harassment. That includes protecting your clients, your customers, your guests, your volunteers, your interns, your independent contractors from harassment or discrimination.
Going forward, because this affects so many people, and after the initial round of training, there's going to be new hires and so forth. How is this law going to be monitored? Will there be the online training classes? How will that work?
So what we do now is we have a sign-in sheet and we provide a certificate to each employee. We generally provide 2 copies, one for the employee, one for the company. And it's very similar to your taxes. You're supposed to comply, and they really only find out that you don't if they audit you.
What about other things? Aside from this training that's required now by law, what else should employers be doing or thinking about doing?
So some very simple things you can do is make sure that you have the large employment poster that companies generally have in their break rooms. You can get those from the California Chamber of Commerce. I recommend that employers and companies have a standing order so they get one every January, they get the new one. That poster includes a lot of information about your rights under the sexual harassment and anti-harassment laws. You can, and you should, and you're required to, hand out brochures on what harassment looks like, what the laws are protecting people in the workplace. You should hand out those brochures to your employees, and you should always have a written policy that states that the company has a 0 tolerance for harassment, discrimination, or retaliation of any kind. That policy should include a complaint procedure that is simple, that's easy to follow, that's not burdensome, and that allows the employee or whoever believes they are the subject of harassment to report that harassment to a supervisor or to the owner of the company.
Amanda, does this also include bullying?
So in 2015, the legislature added to these trainings that we must train supervisors and now employees on what abusive conduct looks like, which we call colloquially workplace bullying. And so that was added just a couple of years ago. Workplace bullying is not illegal under the law if it does not, if the bullying is not based on one of those protected characteristics, but it is an important and pervasive issue that needs to be addressed.
Speaking of that, that was in 2015. We've had laws on the books for decades, really. What implemented these sweeping changes in 2019?
So we have had laws since 1959. The Fair Employment and Housing Act was passed, and then under federal law in 1964 they passed the Civil Rights Act, the Federal Civil Rights Act. So we've had an attempt to protect people from discrimination and harassment for years, but as you noted, there's been an uptick in the laws in the last several years, and that really has been driven by the Me Too and Time's Up movements. Women coming forward, talking about workplace harassment, talking about workplace discrimination, and allowing other women to feel comfortable to come forward with their stories. And so the legislature realized finally that there was a clear need for additional protections for employees.
Amanda Riddle, thank you so much for being with us and helping us narrow down this slew of new changes that we have for California. And also included in these new laws, all publicly traded companies in California now have to have at least one female on the board by the end of the year. Thanks for watching Take Notice. I'm Janet Yee. Have a safe day.